各位观众朋友们，大家好，欢迎收看 J 与 J 论坛，由我 Jimmy 马健以及 金诺威先生与我们共同主持。Jim，
Hi, Jimmy. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Look forward to speaking with you every week. Another week of lots of information to decipher and to discuss. Last week, we talked about the current administration's infrastructure plans, border issues, and there's so much to discuss that it really is never ending. But this week, we want to continue doing that, and we also have some new information that we should ask our audience. Remember, most of our audience are of Chinese descent, mainly Asian Americans. But to be honest, once you put it on the web, you never know who's watching. So let's talk about what is going on, and obviously, Afghanistan, our longest war, 20 years. I really feel like we should. What is your take on that? I mean, I look at it as a complete failure of all of our administrations that were part of the war. The past 4 administrations were all implicit.
I think so too. I have terrible mixed feelings now that we've been there and dug in so deep about leaving and leaving abruptly like we are. Of course, the people in charge would say we're not leaving abruptly. At one time we had 100,000 troops there. Now we have something less than 5,000. So we've been gradually scaling down. But my mixed feelings are by leaving, the existing government in Afghanistan will collapse. The Taliban will gradually overrun, and probably quite quickly, the entire country. A lot of human rights that we hold dear will be violated, particularly with women and young women, et cetera, et cetera. But having said all of that, the other side is, I don't think we ever should have dug in so deep. President Bush, when going into Afghanistan following 9/11 in September 01, he went in early 02, was in there to root out Osama bin Laden and the Al-Qaeda threat. As President Biden said yesterday, bin Laden's been dead for 10 years. We've been there ever since. We moved, U.S. policy and U.S. conduct moved from eliminating an enemy to nation building. And under that scenario, it's impossible to win. No one could say what a victory would mean and would look like and what it would take to achieve that victory. So, without making a decision like Mr. Trump made and now Mr. Biden has made, we would go on indefinitely, costing huge amounts of money, costing a great deal of prestige the longer we were there, and costing American lives. I have never felt that it is our responsibility to nation build anywhere else, and especially in a place that has a radically different culture and cultural values than we hold dear, and B, has ejected every foreign power that ever tried to change it, including from 79 to the mid-80s, Russia. Russia tried to do exactly what we tried to do for their own reasons. It was an abject failure there. There will probably be some unfortunate changes and ramifications, but I am not willing to risk any more American lives for a purpose that either A, I don't understand, or B, I don't believe in. And so reluctantly, I have to say that it is a good decision, and here we go.
Wow, this is one of the few good decisions that we could agree on with the Biden administration. Because so far we have not agreed on much. So I completely understand what you just said. And that's what the majority of Americans believe in. See, the difference is that the politicians now, elected officials now, they make decisions on foreign affairs or infrastructure to pander to their own voters or to gain votes or to gain the majority, okay, based on what the majority Americans, what the administration thinks the majority Americans want. I believe before the 80s, elected officials do what experts and what not consensus, but what they think will be better for our nation in the long run, instead of reacting. First of all, the war on terror was fraudulent. We know that. We knew that the reason we invaded Iraq was made up. We knew that a lot of people made a lot of money, including a lot of my fellow Estonians, my friends and family, that financially benefited from this, whether they're contractors for oil and gas companies or they work for the Defense Department. I have friends that retired in their 30s because they were overseas for 10 years tax-free. So I would say I'm very familiar with what's going on over there. I have friends that tell me horror stories, but let me disagree on some of the points you made, even though I deep inside I actually agree with probably all of them. But I want to tell you what non-Americans will tell you, which is still there's a lot more non-Americans than there is Americans. We, as a nation, cannot say that if we leave, there are human rights violations, because we are the biggest human rights violators in the past 50 years since World War II. We have lost in every single war we've been in since World War II, from Vietnam to Korea to China, Taiwan, to Afghanistan. The influence we exerted, we trained Al-Qaeda. We trained the Mujahideen to fight Russia invasion. We created a terrorist organization. These are facts. Now, am I angry about 9/11? Of course. But do we now come to light to see what the CIA and what our foreign policymakers during certain administrations, what we're doing? Do we forget about Guantanamo Bay? Do we forget the atrocities committed against Afghanistan and Iraqis? No. Do I think they're going to be in problems? Yeah, because we broke up the historic generations, thousands of years of their tribal culture, whatever it is they have. Do I agree with what they do? No, because I grew up here. Now, if I was Afghanistani or if I was Iraqi, would I look at America as invaders? Absolutely. Americans are the terrorists, dropping bombs, killing women and children, using unmanned flights. They don't know who they're killing. And on the ground, soldiers discriminately murdering civilians. But all is fair in love and war. So we have to stop thinking as if we're the savior of humanity, that they all have to live according to our Western, Caucasian, Christian values. When you mentioned earlier that what is the outcome? I could tell you what the outcome, Bush and Cheney think it is. The outcome is the entire country converts to Christianity, denounces Islam, take up the democratic process and vote for the president that we support, and basically colonize another country like the British and the Dutch did, in the 18th century and 17th century, to basically invade and conquer and control a country. Whether we believe it's the right thing to do, doesn't matter, because we have the power. And all the weapons that we produce, that these defense contractors made our stock market better. Everybody make money. You know what the fear is, Jim? You know what they're saying in Asia now? I'm telling you this because we are insulated. We look at our media intake is from pro-Western, pro-government, pro-US media. What do you think others are saying? Oh, no. they're withdrawn from Afghanistan. Now they're going to create another war. Probably China and Taiwan, maybe Korea, maybe South America. Because throughout our history since World War II, we've waged almost non-stop warfare. So I agree with you that we need to stop country building. We could export our so-called democracy values using soft influence, our culture, Coca-Cola, McDonald's. Look at what happened in USSR. It collapsed. So we thought we won. But in reality, our power and our influence is decreased in the last 2 decades since Bush and Cheney's administration. So yes, talking about Afghanistan brings up a lot of mixed emotions. I actually don't think we should pull out because we already sacrificed so many lives. This is not my kids or your kids. It's always somebody else's children that we sent to war and death. But do I want to sacrifice more American lives? No. But the fact is we already spent 20 years breaking up whatever order they had. And now there's a void. And this void, who's going to say that the next generation of so-called terrorists is not going to come out from this void? These kids whose parents were murdered by us, what are they going to grow up as? These invaders, it's like the holy war back in the Middle Ages, the Crusades. This is essentially a modern crusade. I'd rather be there to see it through, but that is not the popular view. And the fact is that by focusing in the Middle East, maybe we will not interfere with other countries that we hold closer, dear to our heart, to be very selfish. Because there will always, where's Halliburton going to generate their profit? Where is Boeing? Where is the warplane makers? And where are they going to generate their profit now? They have the strongest lobbyist group too. There will be another war very quickly. This I know. Where it's going to start from, it depends on where the profit will be. And I know it sounds very pessimistic, but the whole world's eyes are on us. And this is not about Biden or Bush or I don't care what administration is there. War profiteers are, it is what it is. So Jim, to wrap it up, Afghanistan is a very sore subject for me because once we leave, we know what's going to happen. And you were right. We know what's going to happen. We have too many examples from the past 60, 70 years. Look at Vietnam. It's a shame. It is truly a shame. But it doesn't change the fact that we have a lot of domestic issues that we have to deal with. We do need to focus on that to make us climb out of this 3 decades worth of political infighting. Jim?
Well, let me respond to you in a couple of ways. First, many of the things you said are very, very debatable about the U.S. history. We could go on forever. And I would prefer not to spend our time that way because, number two, what you mentioned about our sunk cost of what we have expended in Afghanistan, the loss of lives, the loss of money, all those things. One of the things you learn in business school is sunk costs are sunk costs. That doesn't change the future. What you have to do in making a decision is look at the future. I look at the Afghanistan decision. I looked at it several years ago, the same way I look at it today. Every asset that you don't sell today for what you could receive for it, you rebuy at the price you could have received. So by not leaving Afghanistan, we have to acknowledge that we will continue to drift and we will continue to waste other lives and other money and further prestige. So at some point, you need to go. And you can obviously argue when is that point, how is it defined and evaluated? You can argue all of that. But at some point, you have to go unless you can see and define a clear win. And what you said that Cheney and Bush's definition would not in any way be mine. So they may make a different decision than I would. But I think it's interesting that both Mr. Trump and Mr. Biden have made the same evaluation and same decision. So maybe there is a hope for unity here in the U.S. After all.
That is the hope. So,
I'm not sure that's going to move on to other issues, but this is one interesting situation.
Well, the easiest way to unite a nation is to have a common external foreign enemy. During the Cold War, we had USSR.
Everybody's understood that for a very long time.
Yeah.
But really, the key to having a unified country is to have an alignment of interests, to have people have goals that are the same and win together when certain things happen, so that we can motivate them that.
Well, justice and prosperity for all would be a good start. So that brings us back to social justice, and really, being an Asian American, it is a very difficult time. And I'll tell you why. Like I said, we're insulated in a way because our intake of media is Western media. And history is written by the victors. So if you read Russian history or communist China history, it will be very different from what we learn. And combined, there's more people that took that history as the truth than us. Does that mean what we learned is not true? So we look at Asian American history. So I get emails, messages, or through social media. I see crime on Asians every day, and it's increasing dramatically since 2015, 2016. At that time, I was very vehement and very loud about it, that there is a correlation between why this is happening. And I posted, I talked about it. And as I see this descent, the one thing I agree on with you and with a lot of my friends that are conservatives that I could not see before is that the media is very biased, and the media has its own narrative, whether right or left. We talked about how CNN's producer admitted on camera that the narrative of Asian hate is underreported and being whitewashed purposely because the narrative does not fit what mainstream media wants to present, which is that they're woke, that it would hurt the, I guess, BLM movement. But it is, to me, that is ridiculous because it doesn't intersect as parallel. You could do both. It doesn't take one away from the other. Now, the perpetrators of these Asian hate, some are Caucasian, some are African American, some are Latino, some are whatever race it is. That doesn't change the narrative. It doesn't make a difference to me. Jim, what is your take on why it's being swept under the rug? And, today's news came out, 6 Republican senators out of the entire Senate voted against Stop Asian Hate Crime Bill. That is ridiculous to me, that there's no reason at all. So this Republican Party, what is wrong with this Republican Party? I mean, this is one of the easiest bill to say, okay. I mean, a lot of other things, I get it. You got to pander to your district, to the people that elected you. But these 6, including our very own lying Ted Cruz, there's no accountability. I mean, I guess they just don't care. They openly be racist. And what is your take on why Asian hate crimes on Asian Americans are being swept under the rug, and why these extreme Republicans think that? Why blatantly do this when it's so easy to just vote on it? Because it is a problem. It is a problem.
I'll respond to you in a couple of ways. First one is, I wasn't even aware that there is a proposed Asian hate crimes bill. So maybe shame on me for not being awake.
No, it's not, because the media did not report it. You see what I mean? They did not make it into the mainstream discussion.
Well, so give me a chance to look at that before I can respond why somebody would vote A or nay on that. Second thing is, I don't trust the mainstream media anyway. They sweep a lot of things under the rug and they over-report other things.
Pick and choose.
And the text you sent me a while ago about this man named Charlie Chester exposing the fallacy that is CNN news on several issues, including climate change as well as Asian hate, because the media loves controversy. That's what sells newspapers and gains television audiences and certainly radio audiences. So you can expect them to continue to churn. And what I think we all have to do is have a variety of sources. It's like constructing a portfolio of stocks. You want some to protect you on the upside when others are on the downside. So what we need is, quote, a diversity of sources, a multiplicity of sources, not only so you hear different things and see different things, but you're exposed to most everything that's around, because it's inevitable that some will omit. And you need to have a total mosaic of influences around and to make sure that they check out. Much of what some people say is facts aren't facts at all. They may be made up, they may be some perception, et cetera. But out of that all come a larger picture. I think one of the things that's been most effective about the media the last 10 or 15 or 20 years is it's been most effective, but it's also quite harmful, is that most people get their sources from sources that they already agree with and that nurture their own beliefs, rather than informing them of other perspectives, other information, other results. And what happens is people move down their pathways, and it makes it much more difficult. Now, would I prefer to go back to something like the old Walter Cronkite days when I was a kid, where you had one news source? No, I wouldn't. I'll take this chaos, and I'll take the divisiveness that comes out of it, and I'll take the conflict of objectives of all of this, because I don't want any single source, whether it's Walter Cronkite or whether it's a government agency, which would be the worst of all. And the mainstream media right now, and for a long time, has been acting as if they are part of a government agency. And that's very, very troublesome to me. So I work hard at trying to find a diversity of things, and I engage in lots and lots of discussions and debates to try to learn more and draw out other things. But back to Asian, et cetera, I do think there is, I don't know that it has been swept under the rug, but I think that's a little different than getting the notoriety that it deserves. In the United States in the last few years, there has been an increasing call for a, quote, national discussion on race. You hear that all the time. But most of the people calling for that define race and racial issues as black versus white. And all the rest doesn't matter for some reason. And back to your comment about sweeping things under the rug or omitting other things. The omissions are far more pronounced than what is conveyed. And I think it gives a very distorted view. And you mentioned earlier about what other people in other countries may view. Well, they select a view at their own peril, because if they're listening to the mainstream, they're getting a distorted picture of everything else. And it relates not only to hate crimes, but it relates to voting power. It relates to other forms of what you might call social justice. For instance, one of the things that the pandemic exposed is the differences in healthcare, differences in health standards, differences in comorbidities, differences in access to care, et cetera, according to different populations, not just by ethnicity or race, but by economic class and by location. We need to pay attention to those things and figure out how to rectify them, and bring everyone in the country up to some minimal standard. Nobody will ever always be equal all across the board. But there should be certain minimum standards, like there are minimum standards for schools or other things. And so we need to do that. But in order to do that, you need to have a full plate of information. You need to have objective data. You need to have objective analysis, and you have to have proper science. Proper science requires that if you do an experiment, that experiment and its results can be replicated by doing the same thing again. All right? And generally, science changes and moves as more and more things come to light. There was a time when everybody thought the world was flat. There was another time after we thought the world was round that we thought that the sun revolved around the earth. Okay? So science is always evolving and hopefully getting better, getting more accurate, and it requires a lot of discipline. It requires a lot of transparency of information. It requires a lot of respect for truth and accuracy. And I'm afraid that some of our standards about communication and about adherence to similar rules and codes of standards and ethics are eroding because some people want to make a point. And in order to make a point, they may cut corners, or they may choose to be less than truthful. And I think some of our biggest issues of the day are falling prey to that. Everything from the science associated with the pandemic to climate change to all these other things. And back to what another point you made a moment ago, Jimmy, was it doesn't fit the narrative. The longer I go, the more I'm convinced that there is a preferred narrative that comes out of some sectors of our political establishment and that is followed almost to a script by the media, much of academia, much of the entertainment industry, and much of the educational business. If that is true, and I do believe it is, we have to do everything we can to challenge that at every step with other information. And that's why I think what happened in the last few days with this Project Veritas and a man named James O'Keefe, who went after this fellow named Charlie Chester, this is a very significant issue, because it calls into question not only the results of what's being broadcast and disseminated, but the rationale for it. And I think the more we dig into that, and I do hope there are many, many lawsuits, because during lawsuits, the court system is strong enough to require discovery, depositions, all the things under threat of perjury. The court system is the best way to get to truth. It's not perfect, and there are failures there too, but they are by far civil litigation, or in some cases, criminal cases. We absolutely need it. We have to restore our integrity, how we treat each other.
I love that you brought up the court systems, because that is the backbone of our country, democracy, compared to other countries. Our judicial system is separate. The separation of powers, you talk about integrity, that is incorruptible. It's very rare that the US, you hear the judges or any scandals or any unfair rulings, and it takes time, but the process has been open. And I am very proud to say that's why we have faith in our government, is because of the court system.
And when you have the rule of law, that's one of the reasons. The rule of law, as it relates to property, as it relates to securities and financial markets, as it relates to the banking system, that is one of the reasons why the U.S. dollar is perceived as the safe haven. The Federal Reserve creates the luxury that we have to have our own monetary system. And that's why one of the main reasons why the U.S. is such an attractive magnet for foreign investment and for immigration. People want to come here in part because they know they will be treated equally.
And that hasn't changed.
Their assets and their family will be safe. Is it perfect? No. Every day we find examples that violate the norm. But the fact that they're reported as news means that they're unusual. So as long as they stay unusual, I'm willing to tolerate unpleasant news. Okay, we could go on, but I think everybody gets the point. The rule of law is really, really important, and I think it's under threat now too. And it's part of that larger narrative and agenda. I mean, just yesterday, Mr. Biden said that he was earlier this week appointing a commission to study changes in the Supreme Court. And last night I learned that Democrats were going to propose a bill today, which presumably they have, I don't know, that would allow them to, quote, pack the Supreme Court, have 4 more justices, go from 9 to 13, an unlucky number that should warn everybody, and all appointed by our existing president. So you can see where all of this is going.
Even Nancy Pelosi is against that.
Oh, I did not. Well, then
she just came out and made a statement that she is absolutely against that. First of all, this is not going to pass, but the fact they bring it up, they back the court. It's how many years do we have the same number of Supreme Court justices? It was 200 years.
It's close to 200. That's something I really don't want to tamper with.
No. I agree with you completely on this. You know, Jim, every time I speak to you, I still see hope. You bring me hope that there are going to be people and elected officials that are pragmatic, that are not tied down to preconceived prejudice and ignorance, that will look at all the facts and science and make a decision that provides solutions instead of pandering to just their supporters.
Yeah.
There's still hope. And when you talk about media's responsibility, integrity, we're considered media too. Do I sit and incite? Do we disagree on many, many things, but I'm always willing to agree to disagree, to discuss, to hear it. Mm-hmm. And because even science can be manipulated. Numbers, I mean, I'm in finance. I can present whether this stock is a hold or buy. I can use the same set of numbers and data to present a different story. So even then, but the fact is our nation is built on social justice and progression, not progressiveness, but we improve, we learn, and we get better. Yeah. And no other country in the world will afford this to improve this much because we don't have British, their royalty system or their caste system, essentially, or India or communist blocs. We truly is, how do I say this? American dream. Mm-hmm. And all of us have to remember that and try to not be so short-sighted. Look at the big picture. Look at long-term, what benefits our country. Yeah. And be fair and everything that you said. Offer solutions instead of just talk for the sake of talking and arguing. Jim, like I said again, you gotta put yourself out there again.
Yeah, one of the points you made at the beginning was our political system. I'll use my words, not yours, but I think I captured the spirit of what you were saying. Has moved from elected leaders feeling a sense of responsibility to do the right thing for the long term, sometimes saying no, sometimes making the hard decisions, et cetera, to more of a transactional consumerist kind of response where I will pander to a group, I will give them something effectively to buy their loyalty, to buy their vote, et cetera. And I see that happening every day in almost every walk of political life. And it's terribly distressing to me. And I think we're already seeing the degradation of our systems, of our political decision-making, the erosion of some of the economic opportunities, the fracturing of our social systems. It's already happening. And it should be a warning that we need to clean up our act. And some people blame the elected officials for this. And to a degree, I would agree with that. However,
but we elected them.
That's the point. That's exactly the point, Jimmy. I hold the voters accountable. People no longer do their homework for elections. They allow themselves to be seduced by false promises or immediate gratification. People vote for whatever reasons they have, but the results are deteriorating, and we've got to get it back.
It's a popularity contest and manipulated by the media. So we're all implicit in this. It's a cycle, media to special interest groups to going down to voters not doing their homework. But the fact is, I always say, me and you, I don't know about you, but I never voted by party line. I always voted by candidate, and before I will vote for who I'd like. But in reality, I should be voting for people that I don't like because they're more qualified or they are accountable for what they do. Accountability is an issue. We vote for people that they don't do what they say they're going to do, but we still elect them because of whatever it is, familiarity or likable. No. And the sad thing is, Jim, you've ran multiple elections. The best candidate doesn't always win.
No,
the most qualified candidate definitely doesn't win. The ones that can bring real change don't win most of the time.
No.
So where do we go from there? See, I just told you, every time I talk to you, you bring me hope. And then let's let on this note, because it's never, we always go way over time, and these are serious issues that we have to think about. These are things that I hope whoever's watching out there, our friends are. And
the serious issues will be here waiting for us to continue on with them next week. If you and I can make a safe bet, it's that we will have challenges again next week.
We sure will. But we live, we still have to go on and do what we can, contribute to this society, to this community that we built. I appreciate you, Jim. It's always learning something new when I speak with you. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Jimmy. Until next week.
Take care, Jim.
Hold it together. Thank you.
Take care. Bye, buddy.
Bye-bye.